Welcome back to another edition of the podcast, and it is, of course, our Game Week 25 National League predictions. Of course, it's a bit of a Christmas special, some might say, with it being our final episode before Christmas. So, Merry Christmas to everyone that has tuned in to tonight's stream, and Merry Christmas to everyone that, of course, supports the podcast too. Paul, firstly, how are you doing at the moment?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm very good. Wealdstone have won 2 away games on the trot. So having won one in about 380 days, they've won 2 in a week. So, very happy this week.
And guess who backed Wealdstone to beat Dagenham as well? Of course, it's myself. Couldn't even back against your own team, Paul.
No. Listen, you'll see it from afar. I've seen it up close, and I still wasn't. I didn't think they would lose. I wasn't convinced they would win, and actually they won fairly convincingly in the end. So, I think Dagenham are in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, they certainly are. I know they're a club we'll be talking a bit about tonight in a bit more detail, as well as previewing, of course, their game. But before we do that, we've kind of messed up, I would say, with the timing. Of course, usually we do it at 9 o'clock, and that was, I think, the original plan. And then I thought, darts is on. And for myself, I'm quite into darts when it gets to like the World Championship, especially at this time of year. I proper like it. I don't know if you're a big darts fan, Paul, or not, but I know there was that 16-year-old, and I think for those who watched it, I don't think any of you will look at me now and look at him and think we're the same age. To be honest, he looks about double my age. To be honest, I couldn't believe it. But of course, he was on yesterday, and I was thinking he was going to. Well, he's on today, but I was thinking he was going to be on at like 9 o'clock. Because they usually save the best game till last. He's gone and been put on at 7:15. So please don't spoil that for me for anyone who was in the chat. And I would suspect the majority of people won't be tuning in because I'll be wanting to watch the darts at that time. So we've kind of messed it up, but we live and learn for the future. Maybe I should check in the future. Paulie, are you a big darts fan yourself?
I can't say I am, but I do watch the World Champs around Christmas, and I do enjoy watching the finals, and the final stages. It was on the telly today. I've been working from home, and it was on the telly, but I don't take as much notice of it as some others. But as it gets deeper into the competition, I do, and I just enjoy live sport. So watching that, like anything else, it is great to see. So and the atmosphere of the crowd and the enthusiasm of the commentators does help. So no, I do enjoy it, but I don't take much notice of it.
Yeah. It is on my bucket list, to be honest, to go to Ali Pali when I'm older. I'd love to do something like that. Is it? Have you ever done all like that, Paul? Gone to Ali Pali or?
No, I personally haven't. I've got mates who have, and a bit like you, Luke. If I ever had the opportunity, someone sort of offered me a ticket to go, I would. I haven't pursued opportunity by looking at them for myself, but if someone sort of said, look, I've got a ticket at some point, I would go along and watch. I don't live too far. I'm just over an hour away, so it's easy for me to get to. But I'm not that keen, but I would snap someone's hand off if they said they want, they had a ticket. So
fair enough. Well, we'll come back to what we're here to do tonight, and that's preview all the games, of course, to talk about all the latest news. Of course, you guys have come in with your comments. We've got a few topics that have come through on Twitter that we need to speak about tonight as well. Of course, because a lot's happened over, it's nearly been a week ago since, of course, the working manager Doyle was appointed. It feels like it's old news, us reporting on that right now, but we need to give, our reaction to that. But Blondie Blue has come in and said, hi, Luke, Chesterfield playing Solihull twice over Christmas. What do you think about playing the same teams twice in a few days? All teams in the league have to. Yeah, well, it's just tradition, isn't it, at this level, where you play the side on Boxing Day and then you play them on New Year's Day. And I think what's good and special about the lower leagues is they always consider the distance. Like, maybe you'd say some of them are quite far, but overall, it is more or less the closest games. Like, we've got Altrincham, it's not too far from Halifax. It's probably just over an hour. Wealdstone, they got.
We always play Maidenhead.
That's one of the worst ones, then, isn't it? I'm guessing for like travelling for you.
No, it's about, again, it's about an hour away maximum, so it's not too bad. And both clubs are quite friendly, so it's always a good atmosphere. Never the biggest crowds, but it's always a good atmosphere.
Yeah, I know. Well, thing is, like, I know, like, we were thinking, oh, we're going to get Rochdale on Boxing Day, but it never works out like that. When you think, I think York, they get like Gateshead. It's weird how they sort everything out with that side of things. But overall, I'm all for it. Of course, you could say, well, we're already in the second half of the season now, and like we've not played Altrincham in the league yet, where like you've not played Maidenhead in the league yet. Is it particularly fair? That I don't know, but for me, I'm all for it. I'm in favour of that. Yeah, I think it's good that they always make sure it's local as well. It's quite considerate to all those fans, especially those who do travel, so it don't particularly affect those crowds on Boxing Day and of course New Year's Day. Mr. Luke is in. And he said, hello, gents. Do not want to talk about Saturday's result. I will talk about that all day long. It was a pleasure to meet up with Luke after the game. I still couldn't believe how small you were compared to me. No pressure, gents. Yeah, I know. I've not had my growth spurt like you, Luke. Yeah, and I don't think I'm going to get one, to be honest. Yeah. I was quite surprised how tall you were. I knew you were tall, but not that tall anyway. And then Paul Chris has come in.
And he says, I think if we win our next 2 games, we can afford to lose 1 or 2 games in January, as much as I don't want to, but it's a hectic period. So I assume is Chris a Chesterfield fan?
Yeah, I'd predict so. I think, he's put below Chesterfield fans. Yeah. And then a Rochdale fan's come in and said, I think it's John, is that? A random observation, but the 4 teams who get promoted from the National League North and National League South last season are all sat in the relegation zone. Well, that's been a topic, me and Paul, we've talked about, haven't we, quite a lot, about how sides are struggling. We've looked into it within detail to try to find why they are struggling so much, these sides that are getting promoted. And what I put it down to is just the gap between the league below and this league just getting bigger and bigger season on season, because this league's getting a lot stronger. We talk about there not being much of a gap between this league and the Football League. It always used to be probably the National League and National League North and South. There isn't much of a gap because they were both part-time. Now you've got the National League, which is like 80% full-time, and then you've got the league below that's like 60, probably like 60, 70, maybe even 80% that are part-time. So if you're coming up into this division and you're a part-time side, which the majority of sides who do come up are, unless they're a side that probably are too big for the league below, you often see that they struggle, and that's because maybe they can't keep up with it being full-time. Very few clubs, survive in this league for a long period of time, and that's because they find a formula. Wealdstone have probably been one of those surprise teams that have managed to hold their own in this division. Of course, yourselves, you've got that ambition now, haven't you, about going into the full-time module, new stadium and progressing as a club. Dorking, another club that, although they're down there just above the drop zone at the moment, they're another club that, although they're part-time, they've found a way of how to survive in this division. Maidenhead as well. But overall, you think of the clubs that have gone down in previous years, it's been a lot of sides that have come straight up, and it's probably because there's such a big gap and then being part-time and full-time. Is that something you'd agree with, Paul?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. It's, the whole thing changes, isn't it? The travel, the infrastructure of the club has to improve, for match day experiences and for player welfare. So, there's a cost and impact across the whole football club, not just on the playing side. So you've got managers who are probably coming into a less experience of the National League. They've got to then go and try and find players that want to come and play in the National League for probably less money than some other teams because they're newly promoted. It's a real chat. I mean, I went and watched Slough versus Hemel on Tuesday night. Now, I know neither of them are tearing up any trees in the National League South, and they're in the bottom half rather than the top half. But I was with my dad, and we both commented how big the difference in the quality of the teams are from the National League and the National League South. And I don't know about the North, but clearly it's fairly evident with the bottom 4 that it's a real tough gig to try and consolidate in this league. Yes, Wealdstone have done it. Dorking have done it. At the moment, that's not to say that, it won't change potentially. but the other thing is, Luke, we have seen really established sides from the Football League as well as National League sides fall through that trap door, and so it's no surprise that newly promoted teams struggle as well. So, but I don't know. I think one, maybe two of them may pull away, but at present, none of them have they? That they've been sort of marooned in and around the area since the beginning of the season. So it's going to be a tough. January onwards is always a bit of a tough gig for anyone, and that I should imagine those four are going to find it hard.
I especially thought Ebbsfleet and Fylde would be two sides that would be fine this season. And they've, been very disappointing, especially Ebbsfleet, because it felt like they had that identity about them, didn't it? Where they came up, they had a formula that were effective in the league below. They played quite attractive football, high pressing. And it turns out that they had a good start to the season, and then they've just fallen off a cliff. And now I know they got a result against Barnet and a result against Oldham a few weeks ago, but overall now they're just a side that look below average in this league and a side that looks out of its depth, to be brutally honest. Fylde were a side for me, I think, have shown glimpses of them if they do turn up and if they were consistent. I think they have the quality to survive. I don't think it's a case of the squad just not being good enough. I think they've got players there that are capable of playing at this level. But something seems to be not going right there at the moment either. Kidderminster, we've spoke. I don't think invested well enough in the summer. I think they relied too much on the squad that got them out of the league below, although they only just managed to get in the playoffs and scrape through and get game promotion last season through them. I don't think they invested enough into the squad to strengthen for this division and have relied too heavily on that squad. And then you look at a side like Oxford, a side that for me I was never confident about doing well in this league. Maybe, and I always thought maybe I'm being a bit naive. Maybe it's because I'm unaware of what they're capable of and the players in the squad. But from what I've seen of them so far, they've had the odd good day. But overall, you look at the side, and I just don't think they're good enough for this division either.
Yes, I mean, Oxford was a difficult one because similar to Wealdstone, they had to do a lot of improvement on their facilities, whereas Fylde, Ebbsfleet, and Kidderminster had all been in and around this league in the last few years, so that that there wasn't any investment needed necessarily there, unless there was sort of not improvements but sort of refurbishments, if you like, needed to be done. Whereas I know Oxford had to spend money on their infrastructure, so that taken away from possibly the playing budget. They don't get the biggest crowds a little bit, compared to maybe Kiddie and Fylde. So I think Oxford were coming from a different place. I don't think they expected to be in that position at this time around. I think they're probably 2 or 3 years in advance of where they probably want to be if they're looking to get into the National League. Whereas the other three teams, having been there before, having what they've got in terms of their infrastructure, I think you're right. I think that they've been poor, whereas I think Oxford may have some good excuses, if you like, for not really sort of competing on a regular basis. But listen, none of them have really got humped, and I genuinely do think out of all of them, I think Oxford will pull away. I think they'll get out of it.
That's interesting, because for me, I don't want to give away like our predictions, because obviously we're talking about maybe doing some updated ones halfway through the season, which we're about now, just over. Still feels like we're not halfway because it just goes so quickly, doesn't it? It always feels like Boxing Day is when you're halfway through the season. But I personally think Kidderminster, I just don't think are good enough. I know they've brought in a few players recently, but I just don't think there's enough there. Oxford, I'm still going with to go down. And then I think either Fylde or Ebbsfleet, I think one of those will survive and one of them will go down. That'd be my call at the moment. I'm going to think about that and decide which side I think will go down. But, we spoke about Maidenhead, didn't we? And them being a side that we thought this season would drop. Yet, once again, they've proved us wrong. They're not even anywhere near the drop zone. They're in 13th, aren't they, at the moment? And that could change very quickly. But just shows to you, if you've got that experience of being in this division, you know what it's about, the opposition, like the back of your hand, like Maidenhead do. And then, you're most likely going to be fine once you've found, that way to survive. And it always does feel like if you can survive that first season in the National League when you first come up, you're only going to get better. Because I can't remember a side that got promoted into this division and then the second season they then went down. I know there was Weymouth and Kings Lynn, but that was due to COVID, I believe. That's why nobody was relegated and why they were in this division for 2 seasons. But for me, I think if you can survive that first season, which a side like Fylde and Ebbsfleet will be wanting to do, then next season you'll have a totally different outlet on what your expectations are for the season. Ash has come in, Paul.
He says, "Evening, Luke. Nice win for Oldham. Mickey Mellon doing a nice job."
Yeah, it was good, wasn't it?
They've just got to make sure that they get their home form improved a little bit, I think.
And then Joe's coming. Oh, no, it's not on Joey Barton, is it? Anyone else think Joey Barton is auditioning for his own sports show on GB News in recent weeks? So we avoid Joey Barton. Let's put it this way. It's not to do with the National League, so we're probably going to not talk about it, to be honest, because it is a controversial topic. Let's put it that way. And then Dave's coming and said, "Merry Christmas, Luke and Paul." Cheers, Dave, and Merry Christmas to you too. But then Paul George has come in.
Hi, Luke and Paul. What's your thoughts on your point of Michael Doyle? And do you think going bold was the right choice? And he's added, "I think so."
Well, it's a good topic to come on to, because that was one of the topics I wanted to speak about tonight, was Michael Doyle. Now, for me personally, I'm going to be honest here. I didn't know much about him when he was first appointed. So the majority of my knowledge on him is research. I know overall he likes to play quite attractive football. He's been at a number of clubs, not particularly as a manager, but in the backroom staff as well. For me at Woking, it seems like an interesting one, something very different to Darryl Sarll. He's certainly going to have the contacts to bring in players, from the leagues above. And I think Woking is the sort of club that will back him financially. So for me, I think it sounds like a decent move, and for me, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens at Woking, and I'm personally all for this appointment. Paul, and I'm sure you'll probably know a bit more on him than me. So what's your thoughts?
No, I mean, he played extensively in the Football League, didn't he? And I think he was an international. But the good thing about Michael Doyle is that he has played in the National League, and he's played at the top end of the National League for Notts County. He's played and coached under the likes of, I think, Birchnell and Williams. So he clearly now feels it's the right time for him to go and move on. Woking must feel that they've got the right man, because it's taken them weeks to get somebody in, and they must have done their due diligence, and he's got to have impressed them. I think you're right; they will back him. He is going into a full-time operation, so that's something he's used to, and that they're a well set up football club from what we understand. Just need a little. Whatever was going on with the previous manager just wasn't working this season. We've mentioned, was his recruitment strong enough when they were doing well the back end of last year? So I think it's a good start for everybody and they got their win on Saturday. So it's a bold move, but I think, like George says and you say, look, I think it's a good move. We need new blood. We need new management in the league. We can't have to keep having this merry-go-round of the same old faces. The Football League teams they're taking their chance with individuals, so why shouldn't the National League?
Yeah, well, I'd agree with that. You mentioned about the same old faces. It does tend to feel like that at times. You just seen managers that fail at one club. Oh, we'll give him a try. This must be the time now where he proves everyone wrong and shows why he's such a good manager. And it does feel like it is the same old faces, around the division. So for someone new to come into the league, I think it makes the league a little bit more interesting and makes Woking a more interesting club to look at the moment, because it hasn't been pretty down there, and it's not been positive for a number of months now, to be honest, with the placement. And if they can, ensure a good end to the season, maybe a mid-table finish might be on the cards. Some might say if you're very, very ambitious as a Woking fan, they can still maybe try get in the playoffs, but I think that's more dreaming than it being a realistic target for them this season. But if they can get a mid-table finish next season, that's when they aim to be back to, aiming towards the playoffs and maybe even looking for a title charge, maybe you might say, Woking, because they certainly are an ambitious club that a lot of people have had high expectations for this season. Of course, it's not gone to plan. They've tried something different now. Let's see what happens with Doyle in charge. And then Chris has come in, Paul, and said,
Happy Crimbo from Melbourne, heading to Latics versus Hartlepool for my winter holidays. 4 weeks in Europe, get in. Well, have a safe trip across, Chris, and you're coming at the wrong time. It's a bit cold here, mate. But yeah, Oldham, Hartlepool, I should imagine that's on a lot of people's Christmas list to come and visit, but hopefully you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a proper traditional football match, in it, that two former Football League sides playing against each other. But that should be good, I would say. Hopefully Oldham, from your perspective, can get the win for you. John has come in and said Merry Christmas. Thank you, John, and Merry Christmas to you too. Chessington, I don't even know, but I think it's a
Chesterfield Baboons. I've got tickets for Ali Pali, 4th round matches on the Saturday. Always a blinding day out. Yeah, it does look like a lot of fun, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then we've gone. For me, this is the world's strongest man season. And then we've got bloody Hartlepool, and then David's coming and said, I'm happy with the Tin Pot Derby versus Wheelstone, 2 overachieving teams. I think probably from that, I think they'll come on to our 2 final topics that I believe I had up. Now, one of them was, if you could sign one player from a different National League club, who would you be signing? Now, we said we were going to do this last week. We didn't manage to get onto it, so I've brought it to this week now. Get in the comments who you would want to be appointed as your as a new player for your squad in the National League. Paul, is there anyone out there for you? It doesn't have to be realistic. Who you'd like at Wheelstone?
I think, like most teams, Luke, we could do well. If we're realistic, we could do with a defender right now, purely because we're a little bit short-handed. We lost Charlie Barker for a number. Hopefully not for a number of weeks, but we don't know yet. But I think, like everybody, I would love to get a good 20-goal plus striker. We dominate the ball as a football team, and we defend fairly well most of the time. We just struggle. We sometimes struggle to score goals and take our chances. We create the chances, we struggle to take them. So I think at the moment, I'd probably look at someone like the young lad from Aldershot, Tolaj. Is it Tolaj?
Yeah.
Laurent Tolaj. Someone like him, very hard-working centre forward. Having seen him play, he leads the line well, but he's useful for a goal or two. So, I think I would go with him as a realistic option. The unrealistic option, could you go and get the likes of Will Grigg or someone like that that's guarantees you goals? But yeah, I think Laurent Tolaj would be the person I would look at, off the top of my head just now and go, he would complement the team.
It's not a good time to be mentioning him, but because he didn't play very well against us on Saturday. But from what I've seen of him, not just his goals, but his contributions overall going forward, and it's something that I think Halifax lack, is not just someone who's going to finish, but someone who's going to create chances. Because a lot of our chances do come from set pieces. Maybe on Saturday we saw a different side to Halifax with the 2 goals that we scored. But I just feel like we need like an attacking midfielder that's going to score a lot of goals and get a lot of goal contributions as well with assists. So I'd probably look at Stephen Ween, who's at Gateshead. I'd love to see someone like him at Halifax, because I don't think he'd just produce goals for us. I think going forward, assists, I think he'd produce quite a lot going forward for us as well. You mentioned there about Aldershot. I think Stokes would be perfect, because, he's that attacking midfielder. He can score goals. He can set goals up. He's a promising player. You could also think for the future as well. And when he does eventually leave, you'd also get quite a lot of money for him if you sell him before he's 23. And I think that would likely happen. So I'd love to see him at Halifax. there's the obvious ones, isn't there? Like your Will Griggs. I think James Norwood would suit Halifax very well. He's a good finisher, very clever going forward. So I think he'd be a good one too. Someone said Chris Con-Clark. Yeah, he's a good shout. He's at Altrincham. We've also had Never in Rochdale, I believe. Or am I getting that mixed up? And then someone said Chris Con-Clark. This could be. Do you think that could be realistic if Oldham came in for Chris Con-Clark from Altrincham? Do you think that would be a realistic one?
Listen, they've got to sell. They've got to sell the club to him because currently, Altrincham are in just as good a position to push for the playoffs and get in the Football League as are Oldham. I think possibly what Oldham could offer is maybe more money or a longer contract, but is he then guaranteed to play games? He's certainly a match winner. And, I saw him early in the season down at the Vale and he was carrying a little bit of timber and he was still sort of getting himself back into sort of playing again. And I spoke to one of the directors of Altrincham that I know, and he sort of said, he's getting better every week. And he clearly is now starting to show that on a regular basis. Scored a cracking goal the other day. And, he's a real talent. And the other person I was considering, outside of all those obvious choices, I've seen Dagenham play twice this season now against Wealdstone. And I was very, very, very impressed with Frankie Vincent. And I know he came from Notts County. You couldn't quite get in their team last season, but he is a very, very good footballer in quite a poor side at the moment. I think he would complement us very well in midfield. That link between the midfield and that forward line, that three that Stewie Maynard likes to play. So, I've been impressed with him as well. I think, he may be a little bit wasted and maybe frustrated at Dagenham at the moment.
Yeah, someone's also mentioned Max Kretschmar, but bringing him back to working. Now, he's somebody, if he can stay fit, he gets you goals and assists. It's just keeping him fit, isn't it? We spoke to him on here before. I think he's probably one of the best players in this division when he's fully fit. And, I mentioned when he signed for Wealdstone, I was quite surprised that he'd gone there, to be honest, overall. And I think, is that something you'd agree with, when he's...
Max will admit himself, he's been unlucky with some injuries and he just hasn't had a proper run of games, and we've definitely not seen the best of him. It's hugely frustrating as a fan base not to have a bit of a marquee signing in the last 18 months. We've really not seen what he's capable of. He started the last couple of, he didn't play the last night against Billericay, but he has started in the National League, and we're just hoping now the back end of this season that he does stay fit and can start influencing games like we know he can, and start picking up some goals and some assists, because we haven't got that 20 goal a season striker. So we've got to share the load, and currently it's working okay, but it could be better. Someone's put at Southend,
we'd be happy just to sign anyone. Great show, guys. Cheers for that. Yeah. I know there's been talk, hasn't there, about the takeover maybe being completed tomorrow. Been going on that long now. I wouldn't hold your breath, to be honest with that. It's just, there's not much more we can say. It's just a repetitive cycle where we think the takeover is going to happen. It doesn't seem to happen. I know that there's talk now that Ron Martin, he's actually sold the club. It's just finalising it and everything. But something does need to change quickly there for me. And, we talked, didn't we, about maybe them having a late playoff charge when they had that takeover. Well, it was announced that they were going to be a takeover anyway. They had that takeover and they just beaten Oxford and they won a good run of form. For me now, I just think, although I'd love to have that story, that fairy tale where they sneaked into the playoffs, they then got promoted. I think if they did get in the playoffs, I think they'd have every chance of getting promoted through the playoffs. For me now, I just don't think that's realistic with what's happening at the moment. And even when the takeover's completed, it's going to take time to sign players. Are they going to have enough time to make up the points to get back into the playoffs? But for me, no. I know I said previously, I think they're capable of getting in the playoffs, and I think didn't have that 10-point reduction. I'd definitely say so. But for me, I just think with everything going on, stabilise this season, next season, when the takeover's been completed, that's when you can have a bit of a title charge. Maybe you would say next season. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. Listen, their short-term objective is to get a team on the pitch. I don't think they've got a goalkeeper and their right back's injured, and they let Dan Mooney go in the week, and they're not able to replace him because they've released him. He's not he's not been injured or sold or anything else. I think the real challenge for them is at this current time, who's going to loan them players, because everyone's got a heavy workload over the Christmas and January period. There's not going to be teams who are willing to give up players. You're going to have to then go to academies. Is it the right sort of environment and the right time to chuck academy kids into it? It's Kevin Mayer and Darren Curry are going to be well experienced at it. They know what they need. They're going to have to sort of really play the game here and try and find some players. And it's a real shame because, like you said, I think they've got enough quality in that 12 or 13 they have to really mount a good playoff charge. But they're going to have to play 4 or 5 games in the next few weeks with 10, 11, 12 players, and it's going to catch up with them. So let's hope for their sake that the takeover is done quickly. And from what we understand, Ron Martin has done the deals with the local council in relation to the other site. So there's some development on there. The new owners prospective owners have ploughed a lot of 6-figure sum into the club, so they're going to want it to sort of be done quickly. And I think for the sake of the welfare of the players that they currently got on their books, they need it done quickly to be able to get some reinforcements.
I know Joe's coming, and he said I would take Ali. I think Ali would fit into Cookie's style of football as well. Yeah, hands off Milinik Ali, because he's our only threat going forward at the moment, as Mr. Luke will be aware from Saturday's game. He was pretty good. It was a pretty good goal. Let's put it this way on Saturday. Anyway. Jake's someone said excited for Halifax away 3-2 to the Dale, but we will move our attention to the predictions. Now, I've kind of messed up because I forgot to count Paul's point tally up from last week because he forgot to send me them through. So I forgot. Well, we've both basically messed up because I forgot to watch the podcast back as well. To get the predictions as he didn't send them, and I didn't have time when I was just working it out. So we're going to update that at a later date. So we'll have 2 weeks to update. As it stands, I think we're 10 points in front. I don't know if that's changed or not, depending on last week. All I can remember is I've definitely got 3 points because I backed Wheelstone to beat Dagenham, and Paul couldn't even back his own team to beat Dagenham. Were you shocked with that, Paul?
Oh, like I said to you off camera, that I was always confident they wouldn't get beaten, but I just wasn't confident they would win a game. They haven't won a game in over a year. So, I know it had to change at some point. I genuinely didn't see it coming against Dagenham, but having watched the game, Dagenham were a poor side, and, Wheelstone, the quality wasn't Wheelstone a bit more in the second of a poor Daggers side and took the points.
We'll get on with the predictions then. I'll put the overlay on screen. So please remember to like and subscribe. Liking gets it out to more National League fans. Subscribing just grows the community even more. It's growing every day. I keep looking and we're always getting more and more. I think the next goal is to get to 2,000. I think we're just like 20, 30 subscribers short now of getting to 1,600. If we could maybe do that before next week, I think that's realistic. That would be amazing if we could do that before the new year. But the ultimate aim is, of course, to get to 2,000. Anyway, we'll get on with the predictions then. This is the table at the moment. No change at the top. Chesterfield lead the way. Bromley and Barnet behind them. Altrincham, of course, they've moved up to 4th. Solihull have dropped down to 5th. Gateshead maintained. I think, no, they've dropped down a place into 6th because they were 5th. Halifax on the verge of getting back into the playoff spots. I think if they do beat Rochdale, they'll be back in the playoff spots on Saturday. Looking towards the bottom of the table, it's the same four sides that got promoted: Ebbsfleet, Oxford, Kidderminster and Fylde. The four sides that got promoted still sit inside the relegation places. York and Dorking pondering above the drop zone. There's been talk about Dorking maybe falling into the drop zone for me. Is that something you could see, Paul? Them going down this season, maybe?
Oh, it's definitely it's definitely doable. You know, I think I had them to be sort of a lot stronger this season, and they just haven't kicked on, have they? And I don't know, whether they're just finding it difficult to attract players, and they're not quite at that full-time model, but they do play a big, open, expansive sort of game, and sometimes they come unstuck, and they've got a difficult one at the weekend against Eastleigh, who are in a fine run of form. So I can't see them picking up any points just prior to Christmas. So yeah, it could be a tough period for them.
Yeah, well, it certainly could, and the problem with them is them being just too inconsistent. 1 week they could beat top of the league, next week they could lose the bottom of the league. You just don't know what to expect from Dorking. And I was hoping this season, I think the aim still was to survive. And I think if they did survive, they'd say, job well done, we've done a job for the season. But I was just hoping that maybe defensively they'd tighten up this season, they'd be a bit more consistent. And they've kind of just struggled, haven't they, for that. But I'd like to think when they need to, they'll get it together and be able to survive this season. We'll get on with the games then. First match is, of course, Fylde versus Dagenham. Now, Dagenham's a team that I want to talk a bit about at the moment. Ben Strevens, he was a name when he was firstly appointed. Oh, that's what Dagenham need. They need a change after Darryl McMahon. He was good at Eastleigh. We want to kick on now and get into the playoff spots. Just looking at his win percentage. He's had a 28% of his games have been win percentages, and 50% of his 36 games have been defeats. What is Dagenham's ambition then for you? Because you look at that is bottom half statistics there. You're not going to be getting in the playoffs with losing 50% of your games and only winning 28%. Yeah, what would you say Dagenham's ambition is as a club, and do you think it's time they get a change there?
It's a really difficult one because they had Darryl McMahon for quite a while. Strevens was clearly decent enough at Eastleigh and sort of run his course there, and you'd have thought it was a good appointment. And they haven't kicked on. And having seen them Saturday, they were a really, really poor side, and I think some of the Daggers fans are starting to get a little bit of the hump with it, and they are underachieving. I mean, they've had some investments from some American investors, and they're going to want a return on what they've sort of put in. Listen, they having seen what they played like on Saturday, they could easily slip into that bottom four without doubt.
I think what I get from Dagenham is you look at this game and it's a must-win because they're playing against a side that haven't won in 7. Dagenham, they're out the FA Trophy. That's kind of spoiled any chance of going to Wembley this season. They've just lost to Wealdstone, and that's their first win away from home in nearly over a year. There's a lot certainly going on there. And for me, I would say if Dagenham don't win this game or fail to get a result against Fylde, for me, I'd be saying, look, it's time we look for a change. I know you can say, well, it's just a repetitive cycle. We sacked Darryl McMahon, now we've sacked Ben Strevens. Maybe that's not the problem. But for me, when I look at Dagenham, I think they're a side that there's better managers out there. I'm just not totally convinced with Ben Strevens, and the recruitment I think's been poor. Some might say he's been back, some might say he hasn't. For me, I'm just not the biggest fan of Ben Strevens overall, to be honest, and what he's done at Dagenham so far. And I would be looking for a change if Dagenham's ambition is to be looking towards the playoffs, which is what they want to do. They want to get back in the Football League, and for the past couple of seasons, they've been nowhere near, and they're just getting worse and worse season on season. This season, they're probably classed as being in a relegation scrap at the moment, unless they pick things up. My prediction, though, for this game, Dagenham not in the best form. Fylde certainly aren't. I'm going for a 1-1 draw. How do you see it going, Paul?
I'm going to go for AFC Fylde 2, Dagenham 0.
Ooh, we'll move on to the next game then. Barnet versus Boreham Wood. A bit of a derby, of course. I don't think these two sides have actually met at the Hive since Boreham Wood knocked Barnet out of the playoffs last season. So Barnet will be wanting revenge. A couple of weeks ago, you'd be saying it's most likely Barnet will get revenge in it, and they're certainly strong favourites. For me, I'm not totally convinced. Boreham Wood come into this on back-to-back wins. Barnet have not won in the league. Well, not won in the league in 5. Yeah, it's a hard one to call this, and I'm going to go for another draw. To be honest, I'm going for a 1-1 draw. How do you see it going, Paul?
Yeah, I've gone exactly the same. It's quite. Both teams are quite direct. I can't imagine it'll be the prettiest football match out there. Boreham would have got to be taking on a little bit of hope. They've picked up form and points in the last couple of games, and Barnet are on a bit of a wretched run, aren't they? So they're going to want to rest that slide, and I think the advantage of them being at home it helps slightly. But I'm with you. I can't see it being a high-scoring game, so I've gone 1-1 as well.
We'll move on to the next game then. Chesterfield versus Aldershot. There aren't many sides, I don't think, that are capable of getting a result at Chesterfield this season. One of the sides I would say that are capable would be Aldershot. I know about probably over a month ago now when Chesterfield played Barnet, were first versus second, and it was the start of Barnet's downfall that game when they were defeated. We said prior to kickoff, if there's going to be a side that come to the technique this season that take points off Chesterfield, you'd like to think it would be Barnet with them being second. I think now if there was a side at the moment that would go to Chesterfield and get a result, I would say it'd be Aldershot. But Aldershot are also the sort of side that could turn up to Chesterfield and get absolutely spanked. So for me, I think if Chesterfield turn up, Aldershot come into this after conceding 5 at home and losing to Eastleigh, I'm going to go for a 3-1 Chesterfield win. How do you see it going, Paul?
Luke, what are we doing? I've gone for a 3-1 Chesterfield win.
I didn't even
listen, Aldershot are clearly capable of scoring goals. They scored 3 on Saturday. They're very capable of letting goals in. That was a very unreal, was it 7-5 at Swindon? So Aldershot aren't scared of letting goals in, but they're not also scared of scoring. I think they're in the top 7 with a 0 goal difference. That's quite unusual. So I think Chesterfield are just going to be too strong at home. I think you're right. Aldershot probably can compete with them. They're not going to go into it with a huge amount of confidence after being 5-0 down at one point last weekend. They're going to hope for a little bit of a better showing, I would imagine. But I just think Chesterfield are going to be too strong. Listen, the only thing that might derail Chesterfield this season, if Paul Cook does end up leaving to go to a different team, because I think he's in line or being touted for one of the jobs in the EFL recently. I can't remember, it's gone out of my head now which team it would be, but Plymouth, the Plymouth job. So, I think Paul Cook staying at Chesterfield is going to be important as any players that stay. And I think they will win on Saturday and go into the Christmas period top of the league.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. Next game, Eastleigh versus Dorking. Dorking, like I mentioned, the sort of side that will get results maybe when they least expect it. Of course, in the replay at Dorking in the early fixture, it was a 0-0 draw. I think it'll be another draw. Eastleigh, maybe you would say on good form. They've just battered Aldershot away from home, scoring 5 away from home. Not many sides are going to be capable of doing that this season. But Dorking are a side that are capable of getting results against sides like Eastleigh. Some might say it's a bit of a derby, this. Not too far. It's fairly local. Maybe you'll correct me on that, Paul. I'd say 2-2 draw. How do you see it going, Paul?
I've gone for Eastleigh 3, Dorking 0. They're not a million miles away. Eastleigh are on the south coast. Dorking are sort of the bottom end of the M20, around the M25. So it's not a million miles away. I think Eastleigh are just going into this game with a lot of confidence. They recently beat Reading, didn't they, with quite a good performance. Scoring 5 at the weekend against an informed Aldershot side. Yeah, they're going to fancy themselves. Richard Hill's gone in there and stabilised it. And they kind of just, they're plodding along with no real sort of fanfare. I saw them early in the season. They defended very well. They just couldn't really score any goals, but they seem to have arrested that and changed that. So now that they've got goals in them, they're going to be a real threat in this back end of this season. And I just think they're going to be too strong for Dorking, who are a little bit wounded at the moment. We'll
move on to the next game then. Derby Day, Halifax versus Rochdale. An old derby that's back in business, some might say. Maybe not Rochdale fans. I think the older fans will. Who are Rochdale fans will say it's a derby that's back. For me, you look at Rochdale, they've had a lot of injury issues at the moment. Halifax come into this game off the back of a very good result away from home at Gateshead. Of course, when we played each other early on in the season, we went to Rochdale and we actually beat them away from home. I'm actually quite confident going into this game. It's probably the game that I'm the most confident about over the Christmas period, and that's us playing Altrincham twice and Southend. This is the game where I think I'm fairly confident we're going to go and win this, and I'm actually going to go for a 2-1 Halifax win. How do you see it going, Paul?
Well, you'll be pleased to know that I've pitched that it's going to be 2-2 draw, Luke. So Halifax have got a likelihood of winning, because I'm not saying they will. Listen, I think you're right. Halifax are going into it with a little bit of confidence. They're at home. I don't know what the crowd will be like, but you'd think it will be fairly big and fairly noisy. And I'd say, that's a real good, strong National League tie, isn't it? And Rochdale, they're a really difficult team to gauge. I know they got a bit of an issue with some injuries, but they're just a real difficult team to gauge. So I think even those games they've lost, they've been in the games and they probably aren't getting the results they maybe deserve. But I think Saturday is going to be difficult for them, because Halifax are going to be buoyed by what they did at the weekend and they're at home. So it's going to be 2-2.
I can't see that happening, Paul, because we hardly score ever. But to be fair, you actually I know for a fact, I think you went for a Gateshead win against us.
Yeah.
Once again, it went in our favour. So let's hope this curse continues for you, Paul. Kidderminster versus Southend. We spoke about the problems at Southend. We've spoke about them being low on numbers. For this reason, they're not as good away from home as they are at home. So for that reason, for me, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. How do you see it going, Paul?
Well, first of all, let's hope it's not postponed. Let's hope they are able to field a side and fulfil the fixture. Kidderminster have got to be rubbing their hands and thinking this is a great time to be playing Southend. They're desperate for the points. I still think Southend have got the quality in 11 players to be able to get something out of Kiddie. The big factor is, are they going to have a goalkeeper, in their side? So I've still gone with Kidderminster Southend to win 1-0. So I'm still confident they'll get something out of it. It's a them against us scenario for Southend. So their backs against the wall, and they seem to be doing all right with it. So that's what I'm going for. Kiddie 0, Southend 1.
Oldham versus Gateshead. Of course, Oldham come into this after going to Solihull and winning there. Gateshead come into this after losing at home to Halifax. A very disappointing result for them. For me, when I look at this game, we've spoke about Oldham being a better team away from home than what they are at home. Gateshead will come here and they will frustrate the hell out of Oldham and the Oldham fans, because they will just keep the ball for the sake of it. Maybe not for the sake of it, but will keep the ball and it'll just frustrate Oldham. And it just depends if Oldham fall for that trap of going to press them and then Gateshead being able to catch them out, or they're patient with the play Oldham. That's how I think the result's going to go. And for me, I'm going to go for a 0-0 draw. Maybe a bit one that not many people would agree with, but for me, that's what I'm going to go with, to be honest. I don't think either side will be scoring on Saturday afternoon. How do you see it going, Paul?
that's a bold prediction. Well, I'm not very good at predictions, Luke, as you know. So I've gone with Oldham to lose 3-1. I think their wretched home form is going to continue. I think Gateshead, like you said, possession based, will use that to their advantage. And I think that, they've got to bounce back from getting beaten by Halifax, who, that's no disgrace looking at how Halifax are getting on. But if Gateshead have got any ambition to want to sort of stay in that top 7, games like Oldham away are where they've got to try and pick up points if they can, especially after losing at home last week. So, yeah, Oldham 1, Gateshead 3.
Oxford versus Solihull Moors, and Solihull need to bounce back. They're not on the best of form at the moment. Oxford come into this after a defeat as well, I believe, to Bournemouth, I think, last weekend. So both sides will be needing a reaction and needing to win. I'm backing Solihull in this game 2-1. How do you see it going, Paul?
Yeah, I'm going with 2-0 Solihull. But, yeah, I think you're right. But two teams bang out of form, probably not going to be the best game out of the fixtures that are listed there this week in terms of teams that are in any sort of form. I mean, the only solace is Oxford are at home, so they're going to try and take advantage of that on their plastic pitch. But I think, Solihull had such a good start, and they clearly got quality in their side. They're just having a bit of a bad patch, and this is a nice kind fixture for them just before Christmas. It's just up the road. It's not very far away down the A40, and I think they're going to win 2-0.
We'll move on to the next game then. Wealdstone versus Hartlepool. Wealdstone have finally got that win away from home. Not just that one win away from home, but 2 wins in the space of a week away from home. Billericay as well in the FA Trophy. You managed to get that. It did count for cup competitions as well, didn't it? It wasn't just the league way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the one thing that Stuart Maynard is a very, very well-regarded manager, as you know. The one blot on his copybook is that he's never won a competitive cup match as a manager of Wealdstone. He won a Middlesex senior cup match against Edgware in Kingsbury, which was, I happened to be at, and they only won that on penalties, believe it or not. So, yeah, that something needed to sort of break on this week is getting that away win and getting that cup win, and they've managed to do both. I think the problem with what Wealdstone are going to face now is the squad's not very big, and they have picked up a couple of injuries. One of their players, Tarin Alaraki, has just been put into the provisional Tanzanian squad for the AFCON, so we could lose him. I believe Alex Dyer is injured. He's out for a couple of months, so we could be short of numbers, relatively speaking, going into the Christmas period. And we've got 8 games in January. We're literally playing Saturday, Tuesday for January. So real heavy workload for Wealdstone. So they've got to start this period positively. I think Hartlepool, they're struggling a little bit, aren't they, Luke? They're not, they're not at the races a lot of the time at the moment. They've had their injury problems early in the season with some of their real key players and their quality they pulled in. Wealdstone at home have only lost 1 all season. So because of that, I'm going with Wealdstone 2, Hartlepool 1.
I'm actually going for a 2-2 draw for this game. Yeah, when I look at both sides, you mentioned about Wealdstone and being quite short on numbers. Hartlepool, I don't think were awful against Chesterfield. I just think they were probably outclassed. And I think results will start coming at some point for them. I think overall a very good side, very good in the air. And I think that might be where they get at Wealdstone. So I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. Next game then, Woking versus Maidenhead. Doyle's first game in charge. I'm actually going to go for Woking to win this 2-0. How do you see it going, Paul?
Yeah, I've gone Woking 3, Maidenhead 2. Maidenhead are like, geez, of all the teams to play this weekend, Woking wouldn't be away at Woking, wouldn't be the fixture I'd want. They're going to be really up for the fact that they won last week. We've got a new manager in charge. He's going to want to try and prove a point and get off to a winning start. And Woking have got quality in that side. The likes of Reece Brown, who I know well from the Stones days, Denon Lewis on the wing, who I know, they've got some real quality in there. They just need to put it together, and Doyle may be the man to do that. So I think, although Maidenhead are very good at beating the stronger teams or so-called stronger teams, I think Woking are going to win, but I've gone for a bit of an oddball one. I've gone 3-2 to Woking.
Fair enough then. York versus Ebbsfleet, two sides both towards the bottom of the table. I can't split them a 1-1 draw. I was tempted to go for Yorks to win, but they're just not very good at home, are they, York, at the moment? Well, haven't been all season. And Ebbsfleet, of course, got a decent result against Barnet. So, yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. How do you see it going, Paul?
Yeah, I've gone exactly the same, Luke. We talk every week when we look at the fixture list, and there's always a 6-pointer in there somewhere, isn't there? And I think this is that 6-pointer this week. York have got to start doing something at home at least, even if they can't do it away. The amount of investment, the fanfare of Ugla coming in, they just don't seem to be kicking on. And this is going to be a tricky one for them. Obviously, as you say, got a really good result against Barnet. They are more than capable in this league. They just haven't put any sort of run together. But I'm with you. At the bottom of the league, neither team will want to lose. I'm going 1-1.
Move on to the final game then. Bromley versus Altrincham. 2nd versus 4th, I believe. Televised. I'm backing Bromley for this game, to be honest. Alty on decent form at the moment. If you include the FA Trophy, I don't think they've lost in 3 games now. Bromley at home. Going, beating Southend away from home, I think says it all at the moment, the way they're playing. So, yeah, I'm backing Bromley to win this game 2-1. How do you see it going, Paul?
I've gone 2-2. I think, we talk about sort of Oxford and Solihull, 2 teams out of form. I think, you're looking at Bromley and Altrincham, 2 teams banging form. I mean, Bromley have this week signed Amanchi from Maidstone. The guy is about 6'4". He's an absolute man mountain, the fella. So, he fits into the style of play that Bromley have got. Big, tall, strong lads, very athletic. He's capable of scoring goals in the National League South. So let's see if he can, do it in the National League. But Altrincham are going to. It's a clash of styles. This one, without a doubt. Bromley are very direct. Get the ball wide. Get the ball in the box. Altrincham will play through the thirds. Chris Con-Clark will get on the ball and try and do a bit. I think they'll nullify each other to a point, and it will be 2-2 because they both like scoring goals, and Bromley for one are a team that never give up. So they're always going to be in the game. So I've gone 2-2.
That brings a close to our predictions then. I think we've more or less wrapped everything up there. We've talked about everything that we've needed to in the past hour or so. Paul, thank you once again very much for joining me. I do appreciate it.
No problem.
And thanks so much for tuned in as well. I wish everyone a Merry, Merry Christmas, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.